Hello, people watching live on YouTube, which this podcast isn't terribly popular, so most people aren't even watching live. But anyway, let's get started. I'll get the recording going on Spreaker. Here we go. Hello and welcome to I Do What I Want, the podcast. I am your host, Hollis, and this is a podcast about writing and books and, you know, things that I frankly want to talk about. So there's that. It's my podcast. I do what I want. Look what I did there. Super fun. So, as a quick reminder, the workshop that my writer's workshop on character development, which you can sign up via Eventbrite, I will put a link in the description below, and that's happening on February 25th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. It'll be a 2-hour workshop. There will be a lot of feedback, and I am going to record it. So if you're in a different time zone or something like that, then you can still sign up for the workshop. It's only $25, but you can also, just like if you're in Australia or someplace where it's like it's the middle of the night and I can't, then I will be happy to send you a recording, and you can definitely DM me on Instagram or wherever and just ask me whatever questions you want if you decide to do it that way. Also, I wanted to remind you that the character development workshop isn't necessarily just for fiction writers or writers in general. Character development, the way that I am going to teach it anyway, it can be applied to nonfiction writers writing about historical figures, because let's face it, even though you already know who Charlemagne was, you still have to understand him as a person or figure in history, and you still have to map out his character and his personality before you can really write a book about him, even if it is just a nonfiction history book, or even an autobiography. Because if you're writing an autobiography about yourself, most people wait until they're middle-aged or a little older to write their autobiographies, but you were a completely different person when you were 20 than you are when you're 40. And maybe you need to map out 20-year-old self. That's important too. You have to understand your own character development. If you are an actor and you want to do a character study on Juliet, for because you're doing Shakespeare and that's the most obvious example that popped in my head, then you might want to do a character development on Juliet to really dig deep and learn the character and say, okay, now I feel it. Now I really feel like I can express this character. Or a dancer. I'm a dancer, as I've mentioned before. And we do characters for our choreography pieces a lot of the time. And honestly, character development really helps you understand your motivations, your attitude, the expressions you're going to give the audience. So character development, it is it is something that writers, of course, think of the most, but frankly, anyone who has to create a character, fictional or otherwise, can benefit from it. So that's my spiel. Then also The Queen Witch, yay! The sequel to Save a World is coming out in April. And if you've been following my shorts on YouTube or my reels on Instagram, I am doing the countdown to the cover reveal, which I'm very excited about. As I've mentioned before, I design my own book covers with the exception of Spare the Swallow. My dear friend Dio, who is a wonderful designer, designed Spare the Swallow's cover, and she did a fabulous job, the interior as well. But The Queen Witch, I designed and I love it, and I cannot wait to share it with you. I'm very thrilled at how it came out. And I am also doing shortly after the Queen Witch cover reveal, in a couple of weeks I will be doing a cover reveal for the new cover for the re-release of To Save a World, which I will be so this will it's the same book. There will be some very minor changes. There's some editing that's going on, and the entire page layout will be different. I finally will get to put the things in like the map and and certain things like that that were not in the original To Save a World book because it was the first book I ever published, and frankly I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't work with the best publisher. Wah, wah. Anyway, so those are my exciting things to say. Moving into the episode, let's talk about plot holes. When you're writing, or frankly, when you're writing anything, screenplays, books, short stories. Short stories is a little harder for them to happen, but they can still happen, believe it or not. And we've all read books or plays or anything that it happens. And as a reader, you get upset, and rightfully so. I get upset. In fact, the reason I'm doing this episode, and I'm not going to say who the author of the book is because that's not cool, but it's because I'm reading a book right now that I'm very frustrated about. I'm going to finish it just for the sake of I must finish it. But it's a really original concept. The ideas are unique. I actually like the characters. There's so many plot holes. It's so distracting. It's so distracting. There's so many plot holes, and it's clearly something that was not ready for publication. I feel it, and it's driving me crazy because this person is clearly talented and imaginative, and they've got again a fantastic idea, and the concept is very unique. But it's like Swiss cheese. and and a lot of these plot holes didn't even need to exist in the first place because the whole reason the character that suddenly went missing, like the whole character that suddenly went missing was pointless. But the thing is, you wrote them into the story, you made them a thing, and then and something legitimate happened to them, something difficult happened to them, and then like, we just never hear about them ever again. Like I'm a few pages from the end of this book, and someone got kidnapped, like 50 pages in. They're just they're just gone. This is a 300 plus page book. They're just never mentioned again. They could just be dead in a closet somewhere. I don't know. It's driving me crazy. So I decided, let's talk about it because it is something that happens to all of us, all authors, writers, whether you're published or not. We get plot holes. It happens. It's normal. It's natural. We forget what's going on, right? So let's talk about why they occur. We're tunnel visioned, right? The writer is we're tunnel visioned. Usually most stories or books or whatever, most things you're writing are, they have one, main plot line, and then there are a couple others that like maybe sides or like a little side plot that plays into the main, that sort of thing. But then you get tunnel vision on your main, and you kind of forget about those little side ones, and that's really easy to do when you're especially when you're writing a long novel. Then there's also we forget, honestly, which is what I think happened to the person who got kidnapped in this book that I'm reading. I think they just totally forgot about them. I do. I think they just completely forgot about them. I think, I think that's what happened because that person being kidnapped actually didn't have a when they got kidnapped, I was like, "Why'd they do that? That was pointless. Maybe it'll make sense later." No, it was just pointless. So pointless, in fact, that the author forgot about the character. But it's in my head, and I can't stop thinking about it. It's driving me crazy. And new ideas happen, which may have happened, that new ideas happen while you're writing, which is great. They do. That's part of inspiration, right? Your own writing, your own story can inspire you with a new thought, and you're like, "Oh my god, well, what if a werewolf burst in?" Yeah. I'm a fantasy writer, I say things like that. But then all of a sudden you're off on this werewolf tangent, and the thing you originally had, oops, poof, gone, our bad. Stopping and starting is probably the main thing. For me, especially, as many of you know, or I've mentioned probably every other episode, I am a working writer. Not just like I write. I try to write every day. Doesn't always happen. Today I did. Woo! Um, and yesterday I was a good girl. But I have a job. I have a full-time job and I teach. I teach dance. So I'm doing other things, and as an adult person, I don't have the time. Like, when I was a teenager, oh my god, I used to think I didn't have time, but I had so much time. I had so much time when I was at college, in university, I had so much time, and I used to read books in a matter of days. It used to take me a week on average to read a book. Now, honestly, it takes me months, even if I love the book. Why? Because I work full time and I teach and I commute and I run errands and I run a household and I have a lot of things to do. And I have two cats and they're really cute and distracting. And then I'm trying to write my own books. And when you're stopping and starting all the time, if you're not going back and rereading what you have written the previous day or even the previous week, which it's annoying, but I always as a safety, I always skim the last 2 chapters of what I wrote to make sure I'm not screwing myself over before I start writing again. But if you're not conscious of that, the stopping and starting, you honestly just completely forget what you said sometimes, and you're like, "Oh, darn it. Did I say that they died? Oops, plot hole." These are all very valid reasons. There are other reasons, to my mind, these are probably the main ones, or at least the ones that happened to me. And again, they happen. However, the main goal is to catch them before your book goes public. Catch them while they're still just in your little draft, and nobody ever has to know how how you forgot about these very important people or places or things or hurricanes. What or what would be more but because sometimes readers latch into something that's the author doesn't even think is that important, but the reader really latches into it, and as and they're like, "Wait a minute, what happened to that kid?" And you're like, "There was a kid in my book? What?" And but to that reader, that kid was everything. And then you have a plot hole, you forget their favorite character, you get a bad review, and they're gonna tell other people not to read your book because you've got a plot hole in it. So you don't want that. How do we avoid this? Well, first and foremost, make an outline. And I know I am definitely much more of a pantser when it comes to writing. Plotters don't have, actually, plotters probably have a lot less plot holes in general. But even as a pantser, I always have a high, it honestly looks like, as a former project manager, it looks like a milestone waterfall work. Like I would plan a project when I was when I was working at design agencies and stuff. Um, so I just basically, I don't put dates on it, but I would say, okay, starting point here, first milestone, next milestone, dot 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 dot, and I put the milestones in. And again, I am more of a free form writer. I'm more of a pantser. I don't like to corral myself so much. But this also keeps me on task and it keeps me from forgetting certain things. It's not foolproof because if in my little creative space, I do create a little side character and it's not in the main plot that I've noted, that can be a problem. Um, Sometimes I like to make a note. Most of the time, I just try to remember. Um, But yeah, making a plot outline, even a very high one that's like on a napkin, it can be tiny. I've had plot outlines for 300-page novels on a Post-it, just to give you an idea of like it doesn't have to be detailed. but it does have to keep you on task. And that's a great way to do it. Another thing to do is to list all of your characters and keep them on like a notebook or something. I personally am a big fan of handwriting everything. I have notebooks that keep my notes in check and together. I have like many authors, I have lists of names that I just like that I'm like, oh, I'll use that for a character next time I need a name. All of that. Keep in one of your random notebooks, or if you're more of a technology person, on your laptop or computer, in your little notepad app thing, keep a list and make it a living list and running list, living, running, list of every single character that is in your book. So before you even start, obviously, you know who your characters are before you start writing. And then when you add a new character, put them in that list and just keep that list open while you're writing. Keep it open, keep it next to you, and so you can glance at it and then you're like, "Oh, well, we haven't seen Bill in a few chapters. Well, I better amend that." Totally forgot about Bill. Keeping a list of all your characters really does help. It's helped me a lot. It's helped me yeah, it's actually kept me from forgetting a couple people in the past. Double check your own work. This is what I was saying earlier, about when things are starting and stopping. But even when you're not starting and stopping, even when you are writing every single day, I strongly recommend, you don't have to read word for word, but especially when you're writing your first draft, because that's the easiest place to catch your plot holes, is, take care of it before it becomes a problem. And then it's so much easier to massage things in your first draft than it is later on when you start to solidify things more. Every time I sit down to write, regardless of if I wrote, like, okay, like today, I wrote for a little bit this morning, but I only wrote for like 30 minutes. And then later this afternoon, I had more time to write. I had an hour or so. Even though it was the same day, I still reviewed the entire 2 chapters up until my previous stopping point from that morning, to make sure that, "Okay, I'm here, I'm remembering what I'm doing, I remember how the characters are feeling." And that's another thing, that all, not just for plot hole purposes, but it helps put you back into the emotional state of where you need to be for that point in time in the story. Because, if you're writing a fight scene, you might need to get a little might need to remember to be angry. Maybe you're not angry that day, but your characters are, so get in there. Fight it out. It's it's one of those things, so definitely go back as you're writing, every time you sit down to write, and again, I did it today. I wrote this morning and I reviewed from the previous day this morning, but I only got about 30 minutes in, and then later today when I had time this afternoon to really write, I still went back and I skimmed over not only what I had already skimmed over this morning, but also those extra couple of pages that I got to write in that 30 minutes. And that helped me just remember what the heck I was doing and who was in the scene. That's really important. And frankly, that also helps you think, oh, wait a minute, that person should actually be there right now. Why isn't Wanda a part of this conversation? I don't know. I'm just coming up with random names as I speak. But that is something that really helps create more fluidity in your writing. It helps it feel more natural, and it helps you avoid the plot holes, because then you know what you did. And I know it sounds so simple, but and then I've saved the biggest one for last. The most important thing you can do for yourself, ever, 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 for plot holes is, oh my goodness, for the love of God, get a good content editor that is not you. And I don't care if they're a relative, I don't care if they're a stranger that you're pay I don't care, but they better be good at it. I've said before, my mom is one of my best editors, but I lucked out, okay? If my mom weren't good at editing, I wouldn't use her in that sense. I love you, mom. I don't mean use. Anyway, I wouldn't I'm having a hard time. It's late. Anyway. I wouldn't exercise that talent of hers if she wasn't good at it, but she's really good at it. Hooray! And I do have other editors that I use that do content editing, and thankfully I don't need a lot of copy editing. Yay. As a former TEFL instructor, a teacher of English as a foreign language, I'm certified internationally. My grammar's pretty great. So, I'm not perfect, but typos do occur. But grammatically, copy editors don't have to do a whole heck of a lot with me. Woo! Content editors need to tell me to shut up though. So I have a tendency to create rabbit holes that I go down. And that's something that my content editors help me a lot with. But content editors, probably the biggest thing they do is catch plot holes. For the love of all that is good, please get a good content editor. There are a lot of great content editors. And I think I've mentioned this resource before, Reedsy. I'll put the link in the description, reedsy.com. It's double E, not the EA. reedsy.com. They have so many resources. It's fantastic, and it's a free community for writers. It's a free community to join. You only pay if you're hiring someone. Fiverr has some really good editors. You can find some great editors via Instagram. I've found a few really good editors via Instagram and Voice Talent as well if you're looking to do audiobooks. That's just an aside. You can find some really amazing people, and of course, you can just Google it. But those are Readsy is probably my favorite resource to find content editors and things like that. I feel good with the people that I work with now. I'm really happy with everyone, and woo! And I've never had anyone catch me in a plot hole. I don't think I have. I don't think I've printed any plot holes because my content editor caught them before and then I fixed it. And that's the number one thing. Honestly, that's the number one tip. You can do all that other stuff, but the fact of the matter is if you are the only one reviewing your work, you're going to miss it. Because if your brain already skipped it once, it's going to skip it again. You've already started skipping it. Someone else has to read it. Someone else has to read it with the intention of finding those things to make your work its best possible work. So, yes, again, this is a huge advertisement for you to please get a content editor, a good one, and save yourself. So, again, I guess in conclusion, this is going to be a really short episode because that's it. We all know plot holes are bad. They're really bad because they put readers off. I know I mentioned that earlier, but they do. They really do. As a reader, I'm put off right now. But like I said, because I'm just gonna finish the book, and I kept hoping that they were gonna resolve, but there's absolutely no possible way for this writer or author to resolve the numerous plot holes in the last few pages of this book. There's just and even if they do some massive montage wrap up, it would be obvious that they realized all of a sudden that they did that, and it wouldn't work. I would know that they knew that they messed up. So it puts readers off. And even if you are a reader who understands that plot holes happen, it doesn't matter. You're trying to get involved in the story, and then all of a sudden they forget about Bill, and you're like, Bill Bill needs help. Does anyone what get like get him? Somebody he was dangling from a cliff last time we heard. Is he still there? He's just dead? Did he climb up? I don't know what happened. No one else went to get him. Was he rescued by a random stranger who happened to be hiking by? What happened? This is what readers think about, even if Bill's not the main character, because we care. And we're getting involved. And because that's a good thing if we care and we're angry about your plot hole. That means that your writing was good enough to get us involved with the character. So, do your readers a favor and avoid your plot holes. Get a good editor, a content editor. Get somebody who's going to look for those plot holes for you. Reread your own work. Outline your plots. Write the list of that's the thing that helps me personally catch myself the most. Again, content editor first and foremost, but the thing that helps me catch myself the most is having the list of characters just visible while I'm writing. And then every now and again I'll look up and be like, "Oh yeah, that guy." Yeah. I need to talk about what happened to him. He's still hanging off that cliff. Hmm. Interesting. Might even need to go back and add some paragraphs to that chapter so that people know Bill just didn't die. And it's really easy. If you do just want to get rid of a character, FYI, just don't leave it as a plot hole. You can just like have them randomly, fall in love with a stranger and skip off into the sunset and be like, and they were happy in a cabin in the forest, whatever. But button it up. You can get rid of them, but button it up. Don't if you don't want them in your story anymore, perfectly fine, but give them an exit that makes sense. Doesn't even have to be drawn out. You can make it super quick, but give them an exit that makes sense. Don't let it be a plot hole. That makes your readers angry, and then they won't read your other books because they're like, "Well, if they did it in this book, they probably have plot holes in their other books, and I don't care how interesting their concepts are." So, yeah, that's my ranting and raving for today. In conclusion, once again, The Queen Witch is coming out in April. I'm very excited. It will be available via paperback and ebook, and cover reveal is in 7 days. And yes, I am trying to sound like the ghost girl from The Ring. I don't know if I'm creepy like that. I have to go put on some fake blood or something, or look like a total creeper. Hopefully that'll work. Yes, and by Monday it will be 6 days. And there's no creepy movie that I'm aware of but the number 6. But yes, I'm very excited. So the reveal will be on February 19th. So look for that cover reveal on my YouTube Shorts or on my Instagram Reels, and which are auto posted to my Facebook, which I don't check very often, but I do auto post from my Instagram. And that's fun. So thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it. And again, sign up for that writer's workshop on character development. I hope to see you all again soon.